I love creating these video recipes for you, but I need your help. I want your input to tell me what you like, what you don't like, and how we can make these better for you. So following the recipe, there's going to be a survey that you could fill out to tell us all the things that we can do to make this better. Today's recipe is a pasta with a vegetable and cream sauce. Hi, my name is John Vito and I am a dialysis patient. Prior to that, I was a cook and restaurant owner for 20 years. While being on dialysis, one of the things that I have learned is that nutrition plays a major role in our health and keeping ourselves healthy, us being dialysis patients. Our program is going to combine the information we learned from the nutritionists and the knowledge that I have from cooking and create recipes that are both tasteful and healthy and can keep us on a good path. Good quality food that you want to eat and the information about those ingredients to help you live better lives. Today's recipe is a pasta with a cream sauce and some fresh veggies. You may think that cream sauce is bad for you. We're going to discuss that. We're going to talk all about the differences between milk, 2%, whole milk, heavy cream, etc., and why we can use heavy cream in a recipe. It's much lower in phosphorus, but we're going to talk about all that. So, very simple dish today. You see I've got some zucchini, I have some squash, I have some carrots, and a few spices that we're going to add. This is so fast and so easy. It should be easy for anybody, no matter what your cooking level or your skill are. I've got some pan ready, warmed up, and we're going to start with a little bit of butter. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of butter. When you make a cream sauce, this is what you want to use rather than oil as far as I'm concerned. So that's going to melt. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to prepare some garlic. Once again, I'm going to remind you that by cooking some spices and vegetables in your fat, you're going to distribute the flavor through the whole dish, and that's important. Okay? So garlic, there's got to be 100 different ways in order to peel garlic, whatever you're more comfortable with. Myself, I'm a double smasher. Smash once to get the husk off there, and then after that, we're going to chop it up. Just nice and simple. A little too much pressure, and you know that garlic's going to go flying. All right, there's your one smash, here's your double smash. Nice and easy and nice and flat. And we're going to chop up the garlic. Once you chop up the garlic, it's going to distribute its flavors a little bit easier and a little faster throughout the fat that you've got here. Keep that in mind, it's going to go very, very fast, and you don't want to leave it in there unattended. Burnt garlic in a dish means start over. Okay, so there it is. A little bit of fat, a little bit of garlic, real easy. As soon as it hits that heat, you can start to smell it. Now, once that starts to distribute the flavor throughout the butter, we're going to add the heavy cream. This is an interesting concept. Really high fat, and everybody says fat's bad for us, but there are some new studies that are suggesting fat isn't the worst culprit. And for us dialysis patients, the interesting thing about the heavy cream or the high fat creams is that it's really, really low in phosphorus, and that's one of the danger minerals for patients. We're going to try to keep that at a low level, so we can cook with this. Now, that doesn't mean you could add heavy cream to your cereal in the morning, but it means that when you see a recipe that has milk or a dairy product, use heavy cream. One of the things they tell us in dialysis, the nutritionists, is that we should limit and avoid milk products, dairy products, and often cheese products. And it seemed like a really large category, so I did a little digging and some research to find out exactly why and to find out exactly what was bad about it. The process of making the different varieties of milk start with whole milk. They reduce all of the fat, creating heavy cream, and leave the rest to add a little more to get skim and to get your 2%. Now, you're not going to be able to tell too much until we get to the end, but you can see that there's a thickness. This is more watery and significantly less cream. And actually, fat-free milk or skim milk has as close to 0 fat as you can get. And then they'll add a little bit of fat back and get you this 2% milk, which you can see is a little bit thicker, but still pretty watery. Whole milk is where it all starts with a significant portion of water and fat. Whole milk, by the way, is about 3.5%. So if you're keeping your numbers straight, 3.5%, this is your 2%, and your fat-free gets you down to about a near 0. And you can see that as you do this, you're getting even thicker. What I found was that those were pretty high in phosphorus. All of the milk products from whole down were a little higher in phosphorus, and they tell you to restrict those. However, the milk fat, the heavy cream, was very low in phosphorus, and it's good for recipes. Nothing compared to when you pour out the heavy cream, which has, by law, about 35% fat. And you can just see how that pours and how much thicker that is in the glass. So recent studies have suggested that when we reduce our fat in our dairy products, we also reduce the calories. But what we do in turn is then replace those calories with other foods and other higher fat products, and sometimes even fast foods. So we know what's in heavy cream, very low phosphorus for the amounts compared to the rest of these, and we can control that, and that's good for us. But when we go and replace those calories with different foods, we're not always going to be keeping track of what's in those and may not know. So this is a significantly better source of your calories. Keep in mind, we're going to cook this down a little bit, so it's okay that it boils. Heavy cream can boil, unlike some of your lower fat milks. I have put some water already on the stove. I'm getting it ready to put the pasta in, and we're going to prep the rest of our veggie. First thing we'll do is we'll add a little spicing to this. This is some fresh basil, and what you do is you do the French style, I think it's called the chiffonade. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but you basically just roll them up and then slice through. Once again, the heat, the fat and the cream, the fat and the butter is going to extract the flavors and the oils from the basil and distribute it throughout the whole dish. You can see already it's starting to boil up a little bit, and that's good. Not a problem. That's what you want to do. We want to thicken that up. It's probably going to take about 6 to 8 minutes. Okay, now we're going to prepare our veggies. Very simple. You don't even have to have knife skills in order to do this. So I'm going to take this zucchini. I'm going to flip them around. I'm just going to cut the ends off. I've already cleaned them, so they're nice and prepared and ready. Now, I'm using a fettuccine today, which is a little bit wider noodle pasta. If you want to use the fresh pasta that are the really wide, like pappardelle, that's fine. But I like to have a little consistency in the dish. So what I'm going to do is just take my peeler and create spaghetti or fettuccine-like pieces to throw in and cook with there. I like the green because there's a lot there, so I'm going to use some of that. And then I'm just going to keep going right through the zucchini. And you can see what I'm creating here are these little strips that look like pasta. Now, if you have a fancy spiralizer at home and you want to use that, that's perfectly fine too. I do not have a fancy spiralizer. I'm going to use my peeler. And I'm going to try to make equal amounts just for the color distribution and the flavor distribution. Okay, so there's number one. And all of these pieces, which you think normally you would just throw away, but this is perfect. Just like pasta. We're going to do the same thing for the other veggies. Cut the ends off just so anything that looks bad. And again, here's some nice yellow, bright colored pasta or some squash that's going to actually enhance the coloring of this dish very nicely. I did notice when I tried to use a spiralizer that these two work very well. When you try to use it with a carrot, it didn't work so well. That's just a little piece of advice. You don't want to try to throw that spiralizer in there, or you have to be better at it than I was. One of the two. Okay, here's our squash. And for the carrots, we're going to run through it once to get rid of the outer layer. And then we can use the rest of it right in the dish. Now notice, I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the things I've always done is I take my carrot and I hold it and I rotate my wrist all the way over. So I start and then I can turn and I can get the whole carrot around. And this again is going to add great color to our recipe. Okay, not long at all. And here is our colorful and very healthy vegetable medley that's going to go inside this dish. I've got a little basket today I'm using. You don't have to use this if you don't have one. You could easily take all of these veggies and just cook them in the sauce for the entire time. I'm going to slightly steam them first. What I don't recommend you do is to boil them. When you boil them, the nutrients from the vegetables get stuck in the water, so we lose some of it. By steaming it or even microwaving it, what we're gonna do is retain all the wonderful nutrients in the fresh veggies and keep them in our dish. So I'm gonna add a little bit of salt to the water, because you should do that, but not too much and not as much as you normally would, because we're trying to restrict salt in a dialysis patient's diet. Okay, I've got a pound of pasta going in. I'm gonna get that in there. A quick stir. I'm gonna set my little steaming basket on, and I'm gonna throw all the veggies right on there. And again, it's just to give the cooking process a start. I'm going to finish those veggies inside the sauce so that I can then extract some of the flavors from there into the fat, into the cream as well. All right, our veggies are almost cooked, so I'm going to do the final cooking process in the cream sauce. So I'm going to take those off while the pasta finishes cooking, and I'm going to add them right to our dish. As I mentioned before, this is going to add all of those flavors through the dish by adding the flavors to the sauce. And it's going to look pretty. We could turn that down a little bit. We got a nice desired thickness in our cream sauce. At this point, we're going to add a little salt and pepper too and spice it up. Okay. Now you can see the colors are really coming together nicely there. If you're trying to reduce your carbs, because a lot of those spiralizers were designed to create a pasta dish without actually using a carbohydrate-based pasta, you could actually use this dish with just these veggies, but I like to add a little carb in there. I need that extra in me, especially for our diet. It's very helpful. Okay, so let's add a little salt. Again, very light salt, because we need to restrict it, but we also want to add it just to excite the taste buds and get it ready for the flavors. You can see that bubbling away. It's getting nice and thick. It's already looking delicious. At the end, I'm going to finish it with a little more basil, just to give it a little freshness. And I think we're just about ready there. I do not generally rinse my pasta in a colander in the traditional way that you see. I like to add it directly from the water into the sauce that I have cooking, both to add a little bit of the pasta water in there, and certainly to hold on to the starch that is going to grip that sauce and hold it onto the pasta. So for anybody who ever wondered, no, you should not rinse your pasta in water. It does take the starch off. The starch is what holds the sauce on there. So you can see what we've got here. We've got our pasta cooking finally in there, absorbing some of that lovely sauce we have. And I think we have our desired thickness. We have very nice colors. So now we're just going to add our final touches. First, I'll add a little more pepper. And I'm not going to add any salt to finish it, because what I'm going to do after I add a little more basil is I'm going to use some Parmesan. And that's a pretty salty cheese, but it's going to add a really good boost of flavor to the end. One thing you'll want to know is never to add Parmesan to a hot dish or to a dish while the heat is still on and have it melt in there. You just want to add it after you turn the heat off and let it just kind of absorb. Okay, so I'm going to turn my heat off. You can see my dish looking pretty good. Yeah. Now let's just add some Parmesan to that and we'll be all set. You're going to be able to find this recipe along with all the nutritional information in a nice little section after this recipe. It'll be very helpful. It'll keep you in compliance with your diet. Look at that, looks lovely. Let's just add some veggies that we got. Maybe we'll garnish it with a little bit of basil leaf and a little more Parmesan. Okay, and there is our dish. It's a pasta with fresh veggies and a cream sauce.
I'm Mary Ware. I'm a registered dietitian and certified dietetic nutritionist. Everything that you put into that recipe meets the criteria for the renal diet. Anything that's fresh is good, as long as you know that it's low in potassium. It's healthy, it's low in sodium, it's low in potassium, it's low in phosphorus. Phosphorus is something that we really struggle with in dialysis because we're eating so much fast food. So this recipe definitely meets the criteria for that.
Where am I looking again? Right in that camera, at the upper thing, at the lights, or in the lens? In the lens. In the lens.